Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 22 of Rabbi Chaim Coffman's Controversial Issues. And why is my head cut off? I don't know, but we'll fix that right now. Rabbi, it's welcome back to the show, sir. I'm trying to figure out which volume knob goes to what. Okay, good. Oh, yeah. 2 years, and I'm still trying to find my...
Hey, where's the screen? What happened?
That's funny. I forgot that there's an actual video set that ends up at the end of the clips of the video intro, and I didn't actually edit that tonight, and I should have because it had like half my head in there. So now people are seeing. They were seeing half. Now they're seing double. That was for fun.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're seeing double. That's okay.
I used to send out an email once a week for a certain organization, and right before I was sending it out, I lost all the fonts. I'm like, hey, where are you? What happened? I saw them in memory. I was like, come on, they have to be there, and I made them disappear. Like 45 minutes later, I was like, oh, there they are.
That's funny. Well, I tell you what, tonight's going to be fun because it's something that I used to like, that used to really irritate me, and there's this whole thing with the oral law. Of course, most of where we will probably travel over each episode will probably have something to do with the oral law, I'm certain. And so it was to me, so many things were presented to me when I was a Messianic, not when I was a Christian, but when I started leaving Christianity and I was doing the whole Yeshua thing. And I started learning about the oral law and the Messianic rabbis, including my biological father. He would say, "Oh, that stuff, that's man-made garbage and stuff." Yet he's sitting there lighting Shabbat candles and wearing tzitzit and and all this other stuff, which comes from the oral law. So many different arguments have been popping up, and there's been some good ones come up. And I don't think that she would mind, but I have a Messianic friend who I do respect because she really does study a lot. She's, I'd say, in perspective of my age, she's very young, but she's an incredible. She loves studying like a lot. So, Rabbi, you've interacted with her this week, Courtney. She's a really nice lady. She's also been very, very friendly to TaNaCh Talk in the sense of when something weird happens, she will message me and say, "Hey, check this out. This person may be." Stalking or whatever. What do you call those people? Trolls. And she actually pulled off a really good one, and thank God that she was there because this was just a lot of crazy activity. So with that said, Courtney, smile, because a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, the questions that are generating are questions that you've addressed with Rabbi and questions that I've had, and so this is going to be a great show, and I know you all will enjoy it. Even the ones who, when Christians will actually watch a show, or Messianic, probably more Messianics, you're going to probably find this aggravating because you're not going to agree with anything Rabbi says. Like me, I did.
But nobody ever does. It's always aggravating for everybody.
And here's the thing, though. I didn't actually agree with anything the rabbi said before. And it took me several years of researching that very topic. It wasn't like I just stumbled onto it and a month later I was like set free. No, I struggled with this for 2 or 3 years before I finally started letting my mind loose and actually studying this stuff with an open mind and really just, following going to the right places to find the answers, for starters, rather than, because one of the biggest problems that I made, Rabbi, was when I was in the Messianic group and people would ask me about, they would talk about the negative things with the oral law and the Talmud. They would say, "See, go to this website." Now I would go to this website. Now, oh my God, there it is right there in black and white, and it's on the internet. It must be true. And it wasn't for like a year and a half later that I realized every single source that they would cite and they would push me to, they were like Messianic websites or Christian websites. I'm like, of course they're going to disagree with it. So finally I decided to start going to people like you. Of course, that's when I realized I really was crazy. And then so I figured out to go to different places. But as I searched it out through the Orthodox teachings, and actually go to the Orthodox rabbis, because realistically they're the only ones, mark my words, they're the only ones who have the authority to teach the Talmud in the oral law, or Orthodox rabbis. If you're not, even a Reform or Conservative, I'm sorry, they have no authority to teach the Talmud. That just doesn't work that way. So if you're learning it from anybody but an Orthodox rabbi, your information is probably fictitious. false lies, whatever the case may be. So that's where we're going tonight. Do we really want to trust this guy? Do we really want to trust the rabbis?
Turn it off right now. Go home. Get something to eat. Come on, get a life.
Right.
You don't want to listen to this.
Do we really want to trust the rabbis over what's written in the Torah? There are so many. Now, I'm not speaking from my own mind. I'm speaking from something I heard many times, and I used to believe. Do we really want to trust the rabbis when they clearly teach things that contradict the blatant, clear written text in the Torah? That's where we're going tonight. So, Rabbi, I'm going to let you tell us the first place we're going, and then I'm going to put on my seatbelt and hold on for dear life. Welcome to the show, by the way. Thank you for tuning in.
Do better than that.
Oh, man. But it's going to be good, though, because this is stuff if you haven't heard it yet, I guarantee you absolutely will. The first time you mention oral law or oral traditions, you're going to get probably slammed or rejected, told you're a heretic, whatever the case may be, but you're going to want to listen to this. So, and this will be something you want to save in your bookmarks because you're going to want to come back to it frequently, more than likely. So, okay, Rabbi, take it away, sir. And I will, if we need to pull up some, which I hope we do, we'll be pulling up some Bible references tonight, as long as I can get my computer synced up with it. But we'll certainly be going there. Phone lines are open currently. Now, this will be the last thing I say, and I'll let you talk. Phone lines are open, 855-95-BIBLE. That's 855-952-4253. If you call in, it needs to be related to what we're doing here on the oral law. Do we trust the rabbis? Why do the rabbis teach? Something that looks like it contradicts what's written in the Torah. Those type of topics that's really what we have. So if you call in and you have something about this week's Parsha, or you want to know something about the New Testament over here, I'm going to actually refer you to another future video or past video, not tonight. So if you call and you have that in mind, just know I'm going to refer you out. So make sure if you call, it's going to be about tonight's topic. So, okay, Rabbi, it's all yours, sir. Let's hit
all right, welcome everyone. I hope everyone's strapped in. There may be a little bit of overlap from what we spoke about. We did a few videos about oral tradition and how it works. Inevitably there will be a little bit of overlap, but one thing I think that people don't realize, first of all, when you're looking at things, as we mentioned many times, everything's in context, right? Yeah, you have to look at what's being said, how it's being said, etc. With that being said, our first reference will be Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 9 and 10. So over there, most people don't realize that there is actually a mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. Now, that's an interesting thing. Oh, the rabbis took so much power. Look, they even put in the Torah. You have to listen to them. Ha ha. Right? So the Torah there says, you shall come to the Kohanim, the high priests, or the priests, the Levites, to the judge who will be in those days, right? Someone who's going to be a judge in those days, you shall inquire. They will tell you the word of judgment. You shall do according to the word that they will tell you from the place that Hashem will choose, and you shall be careful to do according to everything they will teach you. So therefore, Talmud learns out, and we'll speak about Talmud more specifically shortly, that Talmud learns out from here that the rabbis have the ability to judge, give answers, etc. in every generation. Not only that, but rabbinical court, even in this generation, still has the same power as a rabbinical court in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, it may not have the exact same power for a lot of different reasons today, where we're not going to get into, but the rabbis of every generation have the ability to reinterpret, so to speak, the law as it was passed down. Now, someone's going to jump up and down and say, how can they do that? There's another verse in Deuteronomy that says, don't add or subtract, right? You're not allowed to add or subtract. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he wrote down the Torah, all right, we spoke about the fact that it was done orally, and then eventually it was written down, that Moshe Rabbeinu writes it down. He is a scribe. He has no ability to change or add anything. How do we know he's legit? we know he's legit because God said so. Right? God says, this is my trusted servant. You have to listen to him. And there are verses in the book of Deuteronomy about false prophets. You cannot contradict what Moshe says. Right? So now, based on that, the question will be, okay, doesn't it look like the rabbis contradict what the Torah says? Now, in having this discussion, this week, one thing I didn't see, right, for sure, was show me in the Torah, explicitly in the Torah, where the rabbis uproot it and destroy it. In other words, they take a verse, they rip it to shreds, they say, nah, that's not what the verse is, this is what it is, right? In other words, if you're going to tell me they're explaining what it means, that's one thing. If you're telling me that they're saying, no, this is absolutely not true, and, this isn't what it says, etc., that is something totally different. So, so oral tradition, and the whole purpose of oral tradition is it comes and explains what the Torah says. Now, there's an interesting thing, as, I was involved in this discussion, this week is, what I see a lot by, conservative people, at least the ones in the know, most people don't know anything. And the most important question, they may ever ask in their lifetime, most of the lay people, are, do I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog? They're like, ketchup? Mustard in it? Someone say, hey, what about relish? Like, oh, relish, that's an interesting idea. They're not interested in the question at all. But at least according to the movement themselves, what they do is they pick and choose. Now, when you pick and choose, you say, well, I like this, I don't like that. I'll take this, I won't take that, for whatever reason. Like I heard a rabbi once when I was studying in New York, and basically he said, if we don't understand it, chuck it. Like, we have the ability to understand God's law. You don't like it, chuck it. Right? No offense to Chuck, right? So, in that sense, how in the world, how in the world can you pick and choose? So when you look at most of the Torah verses, that are there, a lot of them are very ambiguous. They're extremely vague. They don't explain, a lot of things. They're like, you tell me what totafot are, right? Or what we call phylacteries. Nobody knows what they are. Sounds nice, but Rashi over there says, oh, okay, we're going to go according to oral tradition. Be careful. Rashi says that's an African word. It's a Coptic word. It's not a biblical, it's not a Hebrew word, totafot. Now, if it wouldn't have told us that, we would have thought they were these black boxes, with the things that you wrap around. Of course not. We wouldn't have had any, we wouldn't have any idea. So, when people come and say, well, I want a little bit of this, I want a little bit of that, and I want a little bit of the other thing, you can't pick and choose. I will tell you, because it doesn't work, right? You can't pass it down. So as I always say, a mule is a tremendous animal, right? It's a hybrid between a donkey and a horse. One problem with the mule, it's sterile. So I don't really care what people believe, what their philosophy is. Totally irrelevant if you can't pass it down to the next generation. I had these Karaites, attacking me. They're like, oh, I believe this and this and that. I said, yeah, but there are only 20 of you left in the world. You guys are a dying breed. So,
right.
Why in the world, should I listen? But what are the points about picking and choosing? You want to take a little bit for the Christians. You believe in JC as the Messiah, but not in the Trinity. We ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom in the desert. Everything's great. But keep in mind, the oral tradition that you say, I want to listen to the rabbis, or the rabbis went too far. That was another quote. The rabbis went too far. Well, what exactly didn't you like? They went too far with kashrus. Yeah, because you want to eat chicken, you want to eat veal parmesan. It's all about desire. Which aspect of what the rabbis say you don't like? Lighting Shabbos candles? Yeah, that I like. It's rabbinical. Prayer for a woman is rabbinical. Other things that are rabbinical, you say, oh, these things I like, these things I don't. So where do you draw the line? not only that, but, we mentioned also, in oral law, there's a word called chalav, chet lamed beis, right? But it can also, if there are no vowels in the Torah. So if you put other vowels in there, you get chelev, right? Which is forbidden fat. So when the Torah says don't cook a calf in its mother's milk, does it mean its mother's milk or its mother's fat? Well, that would just destroy half of the yeshivas and what they serve, with all fried food. That would make all fried food, forbidden. But keep in mind, the rabbis, yes, those crazy rabbis are the ones that put the vowels in. Your Masoretic text comes from the rabbis. So get off your high horse. Don't tell me, oh, I don't like the rabbis, what they say about this. I don't like what they say about that. But you're following their text. If you're following their text, throw it out. And you know what happens if you throw it out? You're not going to understand anything.
Right.
You're going to absolutely understand zero. So you cannot have your cake, and eat it as well. Either you hold by the rabbis and what they say across the board, or you throw them out. But keep in mind, if you throw them out, you have no idea what totafot are. The Torah says you have to keep Shabbos, and if you don't get it right, you're liable for the death penalty and getting spiritually cut off. So the Karaites say, well, we'll take our chances. Well, there are 39 categories. 3 are mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Yeah, I'll take my chances. Okay, you'll be dead. That's it. You're finished. Like, yeah, I'll take my chances. That doesn't make any sense. You cannot jump and live on both sides. It doesn't work. It's not fair, and it doesn't make any sense. Now, we mentioned before, this is exactly what the conservative movement did. They came, they picked, they choose, it's relevant, it's not relevant. At the end of the day, I don't care how many members they have today, it's shrinking. They are disappearing. They're disappearing because their constituents don't believe in it, and it doesn't make sense. So if somebody is going to learn, and they're serious about learning, then when you look at a Torah verse, whatever the Torah is going to say, right? Let's go back to the example. Don't cook a calf in its mother's milk, and it mentions it 3 times in the Torah. That is significant. So then the question is, why does it mention it 3 separate times? You could just told me once. So the rabbis tell you, you can't eat it. You're not allowed to cook it, even if no one eats it. Like, you can't work at McDonald's, even to give it to a non-Jew. You can't get benefit from it. So when someone comes and picks and chooses, what they're saying is, I can decide. I can make my own decision. What gives you the right to make that decision? If there is a command, which we mentioned before, to listen to the rabbis. So why in the world can I say that one's good? In other words, what these rabbis say is good, what these rabbis say I don't like. So where do we draw the line? And most people, where they draw the line is what makes me feel comfortable. Well, in my language, we'll call that Torah made in my own image. Right? God says we're created.
That's deep. Yeah, that's deep.
God says everybody, Jew or non-Jew, are created in my image.
Right.
Right? Everyone has a spiritual soul. Right? The spiritual soul may not be the same. The makeup may not be the same. Right? For a Jew and a non-Jew, but everyone's created in God's image, not your image.
Interesting.
It's not about what I want to do, what I think. People say, wow, how can the Torah call homosexuality abomination? What a terrible thing, and it's racist and this. I didn't write it. If I wrote it, it would have looked a lot different. I didn't write it, in any way, shape, or form. This is what the Torah said. I mean, there are reasons why it is called that, and what the ramifications are, right? That you have to go to our first video. But, in general, we have to understand what the verses mean. So, if it's ambiguous, which a lot of them are, where are you going to go? Who are you going to call? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to get this information?
Right.
That's why the Christians are all messed up, and everyone else is messed up because they don't understand. That's why, certainly someone wants to convert. They're interested in conversion. You can't learn Talmud either. Why not? You need someone to teach you.
Right.
You can't just a person looks at it and says, "Oh, I understand what it says. Really? Let me, let's, you can read it, in your own language. I'm not saying people are stupid by any stretch. That's not the case. But you have to go back to the source and someone who knows how to learn the source, right? Even if it's translated, you still have to understand what it says, So therefore, if I'm learning and I know there's a hierarchy, if there's a disagreement, who we hold like, who we don't hold like, and all these different ramifications, someone coming out from the outside, is going to say, I think this. Who, you have no authority. It has nothing to do with, discrimination or anything else. It'd be like, someone was trying to tell me, many years ago, like, there's no problem with intermarriage. So I said, well, have you ever read the Bible from cover to cover? The Bible says a number of times, don't intermarry, right? For a Jew not to intermarry. So I said, so what do you think, what do you think the Bible meant? Did you think it meant only for that generation, only certain nations, only when they come into the land? Like, what do you think that the Torah meant? So this person answered me and said, you're a fanatic. I said, I know I'm a fanatic. I've been called a lot worse. What's the answer? Just give me an answer. Any source. Any source you want. So the person said, I don't have to answer you. And they went on and on and on. So I said, listen, if you're going to argue, right, so you have to know how to argue. So I said, listen, I'm doing you a favor. Let's just say I have a PhD in Judaism. Let's say, right? So you're coming to me giving your definition of something you know nothing about. You've never read, you can't read Hebrew, can't read any of the text. You never saw the movie The Bible. You never read it from cover to cover, and you want to come and tell me what the Torah says. So I said, I got an idea. I said, you're involved in investing, right? Investing money. If I came to you and I would say, listen, take $5 million and I want you to put it in this stock in this company. So you come to me and you say, why? What's so important about this company? I said, you know what? This company, starts with the letter C. My name, Chaim, starts with the letter C. So I think you should invest $5 million in this company.
Right.
So this person said to me, and he looked at me in the eye and he said, yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. I go, what are you, flattering me? What do you think, I'm an idiot? I say, you got to be kidding. No one's going to listen to that. I believe because it has the same letter. You're going to invest? You're even going to think about it? I'm doing you a favor. I'm doing you a big favor. You cannot, people say all the time, and this is another major thing. Comes within the same topic. People say all kinds of things that they don't have any idea what they're talking about. And they go on and on and on like they are, they're an authority. And they'll say, oh, the rabbi's this, the rabbi's that. And they'll bring out these convoluted verses, in these difficult texts and TaNaCh and all over. And they'll say, it means like this. I was like, oh, you mean those short, those short little, fat cherubs, these fat angels with a baby face? Oh, they're the ones taking over the world. We're going to worship them? Yeah, that's what it says. That's what it says clear in the text. These fat little babies with wings. I don't think so. Let's look back at what the text says.
I want to just discuss something real quick. Back on the verse that you shared, in Deuteronomy 17:9, or what is it, 9, 10, 11, or just 10, 11? Okay,
10 or 11. Also.
Okay, so it's very clear there that it says regarding certain matters you should go there and let them tell you what the resolution will be. Now, one thing that actually helped me wrap my head around the title of our show tonight was, there's at least 2 times, and every Bible scholar will agree to this, at least 2 times Moshe Rabbeinu spent 40 days, so 80 days, on Har Sinai, right, with Hashem one-on-one. You can't tell me he did a lot of sleeping there. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, so somehow in the Midrash it calculates there was 3 times, so it's 120 days, right? So 120 days. Let's back up. Let's take it conservatively. 80 days. Moshe Rabbeinu, Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, alone with God. Statistically, you can read the entire Hebrew Bible combined with the Christian Bible, meaning the New Testament. You can read them both non-stop. If you were to just say, you know what, I'm going to drink a lot of caffeine, I'm going to stay up, I'm feeling motivated, I'm going to read the Bible from start to finish without sleeping. 72 hours non-stop reading, right? 66 books. How long do you think it would take to actually read just what's written in the Torah? A fraction of that. Okay, so if you do the math, on 80 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was up on Mount Sinai, do you think that they were sitting around just doing nothing while there was chiseling going on or whatever? I hate to do it that way, but
playing backgammon,
playing
chess.
The point is, with all the time that he spent there, and how little the time it takes to actually read the contents of the Torah, you can't honestly tell me that you believe that there was nothing discussed between Moses and Hashem but what the written text of the Torah is. It makes absolutely no sense.
There was a Jeopardy music in the background. Like,
dun, 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 dun. Okay, so the point is this. For the people who really take issue with it, I took issue with it too. I'm not bashing you. I'm not smashing you. I'm not ridiculing you. I'm telling you to think. Pull out your spiritual calculator and figure this out on your own. He was 80 days nonstop. I can tell you in 2 hours with my children, it's like a lifetime of information. Imagine how Moshe Rabbeinu felt with Hashem, right? So to rule out the oral Torah, it's nonsense, especially using here. And again, is that my phone? Yeah, it is. Okay, so verse 9 and 10. Deuteronomy 17. I'm going to put it up just because we should put it up. Let's see. Let's try that right there. You get to see my green screen. Okay, good. Verse 9 and 10. And thou shalt come unto the priest and the Levites and unto the judge that shall be in those days, and inquire. Ask them. Why didn't it say right there, look in the Torah, there's your answer? It doesn't say that. It says, you ask the judge. Right? What information does he have that you don't have? Obviously a lot, because otherwise it would have said, look in the Torah for it. Right? Ask the judge. Right? That shall be in those days, and inquire. And they, not just the judge, but the priest and the Levite also, they shall show you the sentence of judgment. Judgments for what? Is it a robbery? Is it a stabbing? Is it a pregnancy? Doesn't matter. The point is, there's proof right there that shows you that you have to go. I mean, the Torah commands to go to the priest, the Levite, and the judge in those days to find what? Information you don't have. That's the key thing you've got to wrap your head around. It took me a long time to do it and to humble myself, and it did take a long time. And I'm not saying I'm humble, but I'm working on it. but the point is, it's not just here. There's other places as well. So, and you shall do according to the sentence. Why doesn't it say, and you shall do according to what Torah states? Think about that for a minute. Wrap your head around this. That's a big problem for many of you, and I get that because it was a problem for me as well. Rabbi?
Yeah. So based on that, they're the ones with the knowledge. But again, keep in mind the Torah is extremely vague in many different ways. It doesn't tell you anything, right? It doesn't give you the information, certainly that you need.
Can I ask you a question? Because you're triggering something really important. The Hebrew word orlah. How many? And for the viewers out there who don't know any Hebrew at all, orlah means foreskin. How many different parts of the body does orlah actually qualify to be? Like 3 or 4, right? It could be your earlobe. It could be the skin of your elbow, right?
Right.
Roughly. So.
Yeah.
So I guess my question, my uneducated layman question to the viewer out there is, if you only had the Hebrew, right, and that's really the only thing you should be trusting, what does orlah mean? If it says you shall circumcise the orlah, what are you going to cut off your earlobes? I mean, explain that to me, because no one has been able to. And I have to plug my friend Lon Cherry Holmes, which we're doing an episode on the oral law. Actually, a series of episodes, like 8 or so. We just did our first one. We're going to do another one this weekend. By the way, if you like this oral law stuff, you want to tune in on Sunday. We're going to do a show like midday Sunday. So, with that said, who do you trust? I mean, people say, well, it's obvious what that is, right? No, it's not. It's only obvious because you have a concordance that you trust.
Right.
Oh, and get this, Rabbi. I'm going to challenge all you viewers out there right now. The Strong's Concordance, it's called a concordance, but you know what it actually is? It's an oral law. Do you want to choose the concordance written by Greeks, or do you want to choose the Talmud written by Hebrew scholars? They're both oral understandings of whatever the case may be. You're choosing your own oral law over the oral law of the native-speaking sages and Hebrews, right? These rabbis and the Levites and the priests. You're going to choose the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance oral law over the ones who don't need a translation. Think about that. Rabbi, I cut you off, but I really wanted to throw that out there. And again, that was something Lon, my friend, mentioned to me like 3, 4, 5 years ago. I don't know, it was a long time. But it was amazing. It's truth. Truth will set you free, you New Testament followers. Hey, I love you guys because I was there for many years. Rabbi.
So, when you look at all this, another example is, about sitting in the sukkah. Where the Torah says that, you have to sit in the sukkah 7 days. You have to bring, it says palm fronds. You have to bring a nice smelling fruit. You have to bring willows, or you have to bring, willows and hadassim and myrtle leaves, etc. And it says you do it in front of God. But there's no information. Is it attached? Is it not attached? What's a nice smelling fruit? You think it's a quince. Someone thinks it's a pomegranate. Someone thinks it's a watermelon. Someone thinks it's a pineapple. Whatever it is. So, they'll translate it in a lot of good translations. They'll say that nice smelling fruit's an etrog. They'll say it's an etrog, right? Or lemon on steroids. So how do you know? How do they know what it is? It's a guess. Maybe. The most important thing, I think, out of this whole discussion, is either God spoke to the Jewish people and he gave them two things. He gave them a written law and an oral law, right? Or he didn't. Now, whatever happened at Mount Sinai happened. So if he didn't, I don't want to hear any arguments, okay? So maybe he didn't. Maybe we all ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom. Okay, so put it to the side. If he did speak, and he did give Moshe some other information, which he had to have had, because it does. A lot of these verses just you can't understand them, at face value. So then, what gives us the right to say, I think this one's right and I think this one's wrong? Like in this text back and forth, I think the rabbis went too far. Exactly how far did they go? Like, which aspect don't you like? Well, it doesn't fit my world outlook. Well, that's too bad because, that's not what Torah is. Torah is about putting your will, to do God's will. It's not about to do what you think is right. It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes and everything else, right? But we have to do the best to our own ability in order to do what he wants. So therefore, we have no other source. We have no other legitimate source. Not only that, but there are all these punishments, that the Torah speaks about. If you don't do this, mot yumat, you will surely die, right? That's the highest level punishment of corporal punishment, meaning getting stoned, right? Getting stoned to death. There are other things as well, but we don't get all this information. So the main thing is you cannot straddle both worlds. I can tell you, that I tried to do it many, many years ago. And at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with, philosophy or anything else. The bottom line is, can you pass something down that's touchy-feely? In other words, if I feel like doing it, I'll do some of it, I won't do all of it, or whatever. What is the end result? So by the so-called other, Jewish movements, within Judaism, they are disappearing. I mean, in a few generations, they will disappear because they have nothing to pass down. It's all about whatever I feel like doing. It doesn't make any sense. They pick and choose. You want to pick and choose, so you want to bring me other verses. You want to bring me, You want to bring me other books that we don't hold of, that the Jewish people don't hold of after the canonization. You want to say, no, this is what it means. It's Webster's fourth definition, and we're going to go according to this, according to that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. It's not about, it's not about is it true or not true. Does it work or not? Right? That is the bottom line. So what happens is you're going to pick and choose. And when you pick and choose, it's a disaster. So where do you draw the line? Your Masoretic text is based on what the rabbis say. No, that I'll take because I have no choice. Oh, but eating chicken and milk, no, that I won't take because I don't, I like chicken parmesan, right? That's not going to go according to my, my world, outlook. But yeah, there's another thing. Another important thing you have to keep in mind is, who are these rabbis anyway? One of the things that I get quite a bit, that people will say, besides, how much they hate my stuff, is the fact that why should we listen to them? Why can't I do my own thing? Why do I have to do specifically what they tell me? What is their criteria? In other words, what makes them rabbis themselves, right? Which is a whole discussion. So when it comes to the laws of prayer, I say the following. People will say, I wanna pray, something spontaneous. Why do I have to keep praying if I'm a Jew? The same thing 3 times a day. I'll add things for the new month. I'll add things for, for Shabbos. I'll add things for, festivals. Why can't I say, prayer that's spontaneous? So the answer is you're allowed to. You're definitely allowed to. But you'll keep in mind that the men of the Great Assembly in about the 5th century, with Ezra the scribe, right, with Ezra himself, they fixed what the prayers were. They fixed them, what to say, when to say, all these different things. So now I'll say the following statement, and people can take me to task for this. They'll tell me, this is like a third and long. We'll call this a punt, but I think it's true. The men of the Great Assembly, were so great, they had the ability to bring people back from the dead. That is how spiritual in tune they were. Now, the reason they couldn't do it is because the generation wasn't worthy. Because the generation wasn't worthy, they didn't have that special power. They couldn't do it. But they had the power in themselves. It just, they couldn't actualize it. So I will go, public here and say, if that's true, and they're telling me, through divine inspiration, they're telling me all these things I have to say on a daily basis, right, with prayers and everything else, why would I not listen to them? Do I know anybody, after them that had the ability to bring people back from the dead? Do we have anybody who was able to, go up to heaven and speak to the heavenly court and come back to this world? I don't know anybody who's done that, since. You're talking about, the greatest people created in the history of man. But people will say they are still men. You're right, they're still men. But someone, who's a top tier physicist, right? Let's say he's #1 in the world. As the top physicist, are you going to start scrutinizing? Like, everybody agrees he's #1. Are you going to start scrutinizing and say, no, I think you made a mistake over here. Sorry, this theory doesn't really add up because, of all these different things. He's going to look at you and say, what are you, out of your mind? I have a PhD. I have 8 PhDs. I'm world famous. Everybody knows who I am.
You have ADHD.
No, I said you had. No, I didn't say ADHD. I said you have a PhD. You may have ADHD.
I'm sorry, man.
That
was funny. Okay.
So.
Okay. Hey.
So if you have a PhD, and he says, look at all this information I have at my fingertips.
That was funny.
You don't even know what NaCl is. You don't even know what AU is. You don't even know what the periodic table is.
That's funny.
And you're gonna sit here and argue, and again, people say my opinion and what I see is just as valid as theirs. So I will tell you, I don't think that's the case. Can you bring people back from the dead? I don't think so.
That's funny.
You got people who think they're authoritative, And I know of this conservative rabbi on Friday nights when he would give his sermon, he would quote Harav Gaon, Dennis the Menace, right? He would quote Dennis the Menace. This is somebody you want to get Torah from? Right. This is someone you can say oral tradition should come through him. No, I wanted to come through Dennis the Menace or the Far Side. They're a lot funnier. They are definitely a lot funnier, but you have to have authority. Yep. You cannot come out and say, I think this and I think that. Well, what's it based on? Is it based on 3,000 years of tradition that the Jewish people have that have been passed down generation to generation? Because if you go to any place in the world on the 15th of Nisan, right, there are going to be 3 matzahs, 4 cups of wine, a cup for Elijah the prophet, right? There's going to be maror, there's going to be bitter herbs, there's going to be charoset. You're going to have to eat, 35 pounds of matzah in about 25 seconds and whistle Dixie at the same time. Come to my Seder. You have a lot of fun trying to do that. You're like, you can't do it because it's like stuck to the roof of your mouth, right? So, if the rabbis say this is what we're doing and this is what makes sense, and you go to every synagogue in the world, to every family in the world, right, on that day, it's all the same. Okay, Sephardic people, their matzahs will look more like pita. They look more like bread. Okay, so they have, they may have, a few different customs here and there. Fine. But they're all doing the same thing because it's coming from the same source. It's not about, you know what? I'm going to have two cups of wine. I'm not interested in 4. I'm going to have 2 and 1 piece of matzah because it upsets my stomach. Okay, you can try that. But you won't fulfill your obligations. The conservative movement in the 70s, they had a symbolic extra matzah. In some old conservative Haggadot, where we read the Haggadah, on Passover. So they had this thing for, this extra matzah for Soviet Jewry. For the Jews that weren't able to get out, they wanted to protest. They wanted to show, we're going to protest with them. We're going to have this extra matzah. Well, you know what happened? That didn't even last 1 generation. And if you'd ask most conservative Jews today, they don't even know anything about it. I mean, they don't know, a lot of things about anything, but okay. But that for sure is something they try to implement. And it's not universal. You're adding. By addition, what you're doing is you are subtracting. That is the end result. So if someone would come to me and say, listen, I think we have, why do we have to listen to the rabbis? I think we should do this. We should do the other thing. Take things out, put things in. So let's say I would agree. Right. Does it work or doesn't it work? Right? You want to take this call?
I absolutely do. So here we go.
Okay.
Okay, I am assuming that this is my friend Courtney. Courtney, how are you?
You'd assume correct.
Oh my gosh, you're such an awesome.
Shalom.
Shalom aleichem. It's good to talk to you again. So, okay, so what is the question for the rabbi tonight? And again, thank you for calling in, and thank you for watching the TaNaCh Talk channel for me and alerting me on some issues we had to address. You're an awesome chick. And just for all the viewers out there, Courtney is a good friend of mine, but we view things differently. Let me switch screens here. Differently theologically. She is messianic, but not mainstream. She's like kind of more like I was. Courtney, I don't know if you know this, but while I was messianic, I was actually rejected by a lot of messianics because of the way I thought. But I was still classified as messianic. And that's why I respect you so much, because you're kind of taking the path that I took, and you respect aspects of the oral law, which is my whole thing. I had my friend Lon, who teaches the new show that we started, who will be here Sunday. He said, he goes, wil'liam, he goes, you're kind of odd. And I'm like, it took you that long to figure that out? and so
you should have spoken to me.
So all the viewers out there, Courtney is a friend of mine. She respects TaNaCh Talk. She respects the rabbi. She knows a lot. She studies very deeply. And so with that, with a very warm welcome, thank you again for calling in, Courtney. So what is your question for Rabbi Coffman?
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so one of my questions is really simple. So if oral law came down from Mount Sinai at the same time, roughly, And then from there, it branched off and went to the elders, and then the rabbis have continued to keep that up throughout the years.
Right.
Why do we see such significant differences in commentary from the sages? So, like Rashi versus Rambam, or there's like 3,000 different opinions and variations. So, if it's all, we always talk about the circular telephone. So if you sit in a circle and you say one thing, and by the time it gets around, it's going to be a little different. So at what point do we say, did something change, or can we honestly say we've preserved it completely?
Okay,
That's my question.
Don't hang up yet. You asked another question that I would like to kind of have you to ask again. I don't know if we'll have time to get to it, but if we do, this would be a great show for it. The other question you presented before was if the oral law was necessary for determining the nukadot, why is it that Jesus / Yeshua actually read from the Torah himself in the New Testament times? Why is it not fathomable that followers after Yeshua's time would have already known that just based on his teachings? And I paraphrase that kind of generally, but I think that's probably on point, right?
What? Okay. Say that again. What about Yeshua?
You remember how I think on another post, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, you had mentioned something about because Rabbi Singer made a point that without the nikudot, the vowels, right, that are actually in it, that are actually presented to us about 200, 300 years ago, they're new. So Rabbi Singer said that without those oral traditions handed down, we wouldn't even know how to pronounce the words. And so you had mentioned one point, well, if Jesus actually read from the scroll of Isaiah in one of the Gospels, how is it that he had them and he was able to do it properly, if they were proper, without having the oral tradition? I'm not sure the fullness of that, but that was kind of the direction it was leaning. Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember. So basically it was, just to clarify my stance, I am not against oral law.
Right.
I'm not for it full on either, though. So my biggest question would just be, and if anybody were to ask me, where and when and who said I am to trust any man at all? Of course, I believe Yeshua is Mashiach. And with that being said, I tested his word, so what more would I test in others? And so that's what brought me to that question. Okay. Because I see vowel points being a place, obviously, when you read your Bible, you have to read it. You have vowel points in it. So the Masoretic text is what King James is written from, and many others. And so with that being said,
not really. King James isn't really written from the Masoretic text. It's actually a translation from William Tyndale, who actually started first. But there's a lot of history that trails that. But even then, they really trusted that they would have had to, 1611. So if the Masoretic text actually existed, how long, Rabbi? Maybe 250, 300 years, right? I mean, no, I'm sorry, the Nikudot. Sorry, the Nikudot.
No, that's before. It's well before.
I was thinking it was 250, 300 years the Nikudot were created, right?
Yeah, but they were only written down later. It was written down at a later time.
Okay, but so Mezorite basically means handed down. So just because it wasn't written yet doesn't mean it didn't pre-exist. It was already there. It's just they finally decided to write down the Masoretic text. Okay.
Well, they had to write it down, otherwise it would have been lost because of all the pogroms and everything else. So that's why it was allowed to be written down.
Okay, so we may not get to that second part yet. So let me back up before you hang up, Courtney. I want to go back to the primary question for tonight. And so one thing that I had in my mind was that Rabbi, was it King Josiah? Was he the one who actually, where they broke open the wall and found the Torah scroll? Who was it? What was the king that actually did that? And they found out and they tore the robes and said, "Oh my God, we're supposed to be following all those laws." Whoever it was, Josiah or someone else, there was a period of time where a lot of stuff was kind of dropped and forgotten. So my thought was, and this is where I'm hoping Rabbi can clarify, is that after that period of time, that's where you have, because Rashi and all these others came much later, and so they're basically hashing it out, trying to figure out what it really was. So the Talmud, for all the people who don't know what the Talmud is a compilation of the Gemara with all these different writings of and their discussions between. I've heard of Courtney. I know you've heard this. 2 rabbis, 3 opinions. I used to think that meant that rabbis did nothing but argue, but that's not what that means at all. That means 2 rabbis, they share one opinion, they share another, and they come to an agreement, not an argument. They come to an agreement on what they think it's supposed to mean. Okay, so with that said, it's limited, but that's my limited understanding of the Talmud and how all this thing came to play. So, going back to your first primary question, Rabbi, can you give us some insight on this topic?
Yeah, so the first question is, how do we know it's not...
Should we go ahead and let Courtney disconnect, or do you want to ask her a question along the way, or...
No. I mean, I think we can let her disconnect.
Okay,
it's not,
Courtney, thank you for calling in. Really appreciate that. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You betcha. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Rabbi, take it away.
All right, so the question is, how do we know it's true, right? How do we know it's not a broken game of telephone, right? So, if a teacher says something to one kid, he passes it on. How do we know that, that's the same? Because the Torah wasn't written down until about 1,500 years after Moshe himself, right? And the only reason it was written down, it really should have been passed down orally. That's why it's called an oral tradition. But the only reason it was allowed to be written down is because of all these pogroms, and the rabbis were afraid it was going to get lost. So therefore, they had no choice. But it really should have been, oral. There, a lot of reasons why it should have been oral, but that's not really the point. That's not really the point now. So the question is, what if you had, let's say, 10 lines of children, if you have these children playing this game of telephone, right? What if you had 10 lines in each group? Then the last person will have to say what the first person said. Yeah, so the question is that an increase of knowledge of the message, or not? In other words, how many lines of transmission were there actually, there? It wasn't just, one line. If it's just one line, the Torah would have got lost. One person cannot hold that amount of information. So there were thousands. There had to be thousands of chains, passed down. For example, one example is, women who learn how to take challah or light Shabbos candles. Where did they learn? Where did they learn how to do that? They learned it from their mothers, right? Their mothers taught them. Where did their mothers learn it from? Their mothers taught them, right? So there were things that a person got by osmosis. Even a child that's born, they come home, comes Shabbos, they have the sense of smell, right? They can smell challah. They can, someone puts sweet wine, or grape juice in their mouth. They're like, this is better than milk. This is great. So, it's a system that certainly can be reconstructed. There have to be certain rules also to be able to do it, but it's not a random issue, a random series of, numbers. Because, today, everyone's got, people's names in their cell phone. No one remembers telephone numbers anymore. So they just say, oh, mom, speed dial 1, but no one remembers the number. So let's say you say, oh, I think I remember the number and I forgot one of them. Well, what's going to happen? Can't use it. Right? So the Torah has to be, A, it has to be logical. B, there has to be exegesis in order to figure things out. There are different ways to interpret as is brought down. Right? Rashi goes according to simple explanation. There are other things, let's say, in one verse, it uses the word mishpat, right? The word for, a law that makes sense. In another verse, it says the same verse. You can connect the verses saying that they're the same, that they're talking about the same thing, right? Or maybe not. Does it work? It doesn't work, right? There's a whole question. So therefore you had hundreds and thousands of people, remembering things that, that they passed down orally. So the rabbis say that many of them went through, what they were taught and what they heard other people say every 30 days. They had to review what they knew in order to keep it fresh. But you had thousands of these people, right? Thousands of these chains. So when you look at the Talmud itself, it'll say, Rabbah says like this, and, Abaye says this. He said, but how do you know he said it? We have a contradiction over here. How could he possibly have said it? Right? There's a dialogue, right? There's an absolute dialogue of what's going on. Now, the question is, what happens if you have a disagreement of opinion? So there's also a hierarchy that is built in of how exactly we hold in different situations. Now, that being said, when it came to Ravina and Ravashi, they were the ones who redacted the Talmud, right? Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, he's the one that put the Mishnah together. The Mishnah is a commentary on the Torah. The Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah. You put both together, that's what you get. That's what you get in the, that's what you get in the Talmud itself. So they put all these arguments together, and they wanted to keep it, uniform. So you do have in many places that, topics will be, will be the same. In other words, in the tractate itself, it'll be something specific. And then there are many times it goes off on a tangent. Why does it go off on a tangent? Because let's say, Abaye said this statement, and the whole question, why he said it, what he meant, what the purpose of it was, and all that. And then they'll bring up like a whole bunch of other statements that he made at the same time. So Ravina and Ravashi put it in that place in order to say he said this, and he said this, that, and the other thing, as well. Because, there's always a connection between what was said first, what was said second. So the example I gave before was if you go anywhere in the world on the 15th of Nisan, and it's going to be Passover, and you're going to have matzah and maror and all that, they're all doing the same thing. Nobody's doing something different unless it's 200 years previous to now and people started changing things. But the oral tradition has always been the same. In other words, what we do is universal. There are differences, what Ashkenazim and Sephardic people do, but they are minimal. 99% they agree on everything. They do have different customs. That doesn't mean the chain's been broken.
Right.
That means they had their own chain that differs quite a bit. Now, I think that answers the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, so what do you do with Rashi and the Rambam and all these other, commentators? What's that all about? So think about it. Rashi came at the end of the Talmudic period, about the year 1000, right? Or give or take. So Rashi explains. Without Rashi, you wouldn't understand what the Talmud says at all, right? He sets things up, in a way that it's almost impossible to understand how anybody could have understood the Talmud itself without Rashi giving his explanation on the side, right? It's just, we've lost that, for a long time. So what does he do? So he's got his own exegesis. His exegesis is simple explanation. There very rarely in the Talmud itself, Rashi will go off in a medrash, or something else, and he'll say, no, it's not simple explanation, this is this. Because he wanted to make it extremely concise so people could understand it. So on the other side of the page, you have Tosfos, and the Bali Tosfos from France. So they would say, okay, here's what the Talmud says, here's what the argument is. Do we have anywhere else, in Talmud itself that disagrees with this statement? So then they'll say, someone will say, I have a problem, I have a question. It says over here in another tractate like this and like that. So I say, okay, now how do we answer up? So again, there is a hierarchy. So if we said what we said before, that, the rabbis of every generation have the ability to interpret, you go to them, but at the end of the day, it had to be codified. Because, as we mentioned, there are a lot of opinions. You got Rashi's opinion, you got the Rambam's opinion, you got all, any number
right.
of opinions out there, but there had to be some level of codification. So the Rambam came along and wrote this magnum opus called the Mishnah Torah, and he put everything together, the laws of what we do in the morning, the laws of the holidays, the laws of damages, the laws of, marriage and divorce and all these different things. And then comes along the son of the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, about in the year 1200 or afterward. The son of the Rosh, called the Tur, wrote his magnum opus on Jewish law according to the base of the Rambam. Then comes the base Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo. Rav Yosef Karo then wrote his magnum opus called Shulchan Aruch, or what we literally call the set table. And then you have the later commentaries, comments, on that till what we do today. Right? But it wasn't solidified until you had these absolute giants that put things together, because otherwise, if you did, well, the Rambam says like this, Rashi says like this, the Tosfos say like this. Okay, so what do? Practically speaking, what do I do? Who do I hold like? So built in all this exegesis is a system of exactly how we hold and what we do.
Rabbi, give me 1 second. Callers, when you call in, be prepared to wait. I've already dropped 3 calls back to back because I think maybe they think we didn't know they were there. When you call in, you just need to wait maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. Just be prepared to actually be on hold. And once we conclude a topic, then we'll be able to introduce you into the show. So, didn't mean to cut you off, but I've already dropped 3 calls. Here comes another one right now. So I don't know how you want to. Okay,
I can take it.
Okay, let's take this call. Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell me your name. Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm name's David from London.
Hey, welcome to the show. Could you do me a favor? Speak up just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay, so it's David from London.
David, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to ask about Deuteronomy chapter 17, which is often used as an argument for rabbinical authority.
Right.
It does say somewhere between verses 8 and 13, that they will declare to you from that place which God shall choose, which suggests it's talking about declaring from the temple. Yes, so that they say in verse 10, which the Lord shall choose, shall something. So it seems like maybe it's talking about declaring the law from the temple, and therefore to then extend that authority to rabbis generally might be improper.
So you're saying that it's only. So you're maybe thinking that this whole statute has to do with only when the temple is actually up and running.
I don't know. I mean,
that's actually great. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great question because I would like to know that too. Now that you mention it, so. But is that kind of what you're thinking? Is maybe that's a suggestion?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's the question, yeah.
Okay, David, thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate it, bud. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that's actually great, Rabbi. Take it away.
So from there, what it says, let me just see it here. Let's say the word of judgment, do according to the word, from that place, right? Now, from that place, we're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, from the temple itself. Now, who sat in the Beis HaMikdash and decided Jewish law? That was the Sanhedrin.
Which are the judges, right? Judges, not the priest.
Right, the judges of 71. Right. There were other rabbinical courts as well. You had, rabbinical court of 3 that could judge, monetary matters. You needed a rabbinical court of 23 that could judge laws that involved death, possibly death. And there were certain things that you needed 71. You needed the Sanhedrin of 71. So the Sanhedrin itself, that's where they were located. They were located, in the temple square, in the temple square itself. Now, once the temple was, in the process of being destroyed and Jews were being persecuted, so they fled. They had no choice. So they went, the Talmud says they went to a number of different places. And then eventually, once the temple was destroyed, it got disbanded. So the law, we say actually, we take out the Torah that, or we say that, not exactly when we take out the Torah, but we say, Ki mitzion teitze Torah, right? From Jerusalem, the Torah goes out, right? The Jerusalem, obviously the Holy Land, obviously, God's backyard, but specifically also, speaking about the Sanhedrin in sitting in the temple. Now, once the Sanhedrin doesn't exist, and once the temple, is destroyed, doesn't mean they were the only body that judged things. They judged, whatever it was, that they themselves judged, that the other rabbinical courts didn't, doesn't negate the fact that, we don't have rabbinical courts, and it's only there, right? Because even though the Torah here says it's going to be in that place God will choose, right? But we know the future, right? We know that, if that's talking about the temple, what happens when the temple is destroyed? Once the temple is destroyed, that means, okay, the Torah disappears. We don't have judgment anymore. It means that judgment will continue, but that's the center. That was the center of where it started, and that's where the Sanhedrin was. Again, then they got dispersed, and other things happened. But that was the place where where judgment, came from. You have to keep in mind the world was, was very small, at that point. So, that area was, where the temple was, etc. That's where everything happened. That was the central part, or the central thing, for the Jewish people. So that being said, that's where the central authority was. You tell me, temple got destroyed, they got dispersed. Okay, now what? Again, this is exactly what the beginning of the verse says. You're going to go to judges who will be in those days. Right? In those days will be even after the temple is destroyed. So that must mean, it has to mean, that you're going to have judges later that are going to judge regardless what happens in that place God will choose. Because we know that place God chose, unfortunately, is still destroyed.
Okay.
So I hope that I hope that answers that.
Well, you're not like let's just say you're not like a freight train. Freight trains take a while to stop. You just like slam on the brakes.
And one thing to keep in mind, I'll just mention one other thing, is that when there's a disagreement, in the Sanhedrin, what we'll call the Jewish Supreme Court, you have to go according to, you certainly have to go according to the majority. And if you don't go according to the majority, then, then you're going to have a major issue. Even if there's one dissenter in heaven, there's a heavenly voice that says, you have to listen to this dissenter. We don't listen to heavenly voices today.
Gotcha. Let's take this call. Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell me your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, William, it's Dennis out in Kent Store, Virginia.
Dennis. Hey, very, very good. Welcome to technically Austin, Texas, Kingsland. What's the question for Rabbi?
Okay. Hey, Rabbi. Hi. I have three questions that hopefully can be answered quickly.
Okay, do me a favor. Prioritize them. Your most important question first, because it's 9:30 and we're kind of pushing our boundaries. So, put your most important one out first. Okay.
Okay. What is outside the camp?
Sorry.
Who was outside the camp? I know some people went out of the camp for various reasons, and they stayed out there. So was there a group who were not part of the camp who went along with them? I mean, I've heard talk of the Ger and
give me a verse. Give me a verse precisely.
I just don't have it in front of me. I write these questions down as I went along.
That's okay. I'll find one for you. Hang on. Go and keep talking.
And then the other one might be like, what is cut off?
Great question.
Sometimes it's death, and I've seen it cut off now, and it just drives me crazy.
Okay, so that's really sad because Exodus 33:11 is one cut-off reference. Let me pull that up, and I'll read it for you. 33:11. Okay, so and the Lord spake to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend, and turned to. Is that the right one? Why would that pull? That doesn't make any sense at all. Forget that. Exodus 33:11.
It's usually a penalty, in other words, it's not shall be cut off from his people.
Right. So what does cut off mean? That's the biggest question, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks for calling in, Dennis.
Okay, all right. Hey,
Yes.
okay, yeah, and that other one about outside the camp,
Right.
I got it.
and then,
He had 3. That was 2. Tell me the last one, Dennis.
all right, and the other one is probably easy, the difference between the sons of Israel and the congregation of Israel. Sometimes you see it almost in the same verse, or the, in the same pericope.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Take care. Shalom, shalom.
Okay,
All right,
thank
got
you.
it. Let's good questions.
Okay, cool.
I'll deal with the first one about being cut off. Being cut off normally means that you lose your portion of the world to come. When it comes to the laws of Shabbos, for instance, there's a verse that says that you will be killed if you don't keep Shabbos properly. And in the same verse, not only will you be killed, you will be cut off. Well, if you're already killed, you'd be cut off in a million pieces. How could you be cut? Where are you going to be cut off to? It's like, hey, there's a little bit over here, there's a little bit over there, right? So being cut off means there are a number of possibilities. One is you lose your portion of the world to come. Second possibility is being spiritually cut off means that you will die early, God forbid, right? Your life will be cut short. Not only your life, but possibly you could have children die in your lifetime, right? There's a different opinions. But being cut off means that you're spiritually cut off from the Jewish people. That's being spiritually cut off is that you won't have a portion of the world to come. Person intermarries, for instance, a Jew marries a non-Jew, that's it. They no longer have the status, of being a Jew unless they properly, unless, other person converts, etc. But, there are serious repercussions, for that. One, I'll just give one quick example. If you eat unleavened products, chametz on Passover, you get spiritually cut off. So spiritually cut off is, I have no portion of the world to come. That's normally what we, how we interpret it. The other question, the second question about the camps, of being outside the camp. There were 3 camps. There was a camp of the Shekhinah, of God's presence, where where Moshe went, where the the Holy of Holies was, etc. You had the camp of the Levites, and you had the camp of the Jewish people. Someone spoke, God forbid, lashon hara, badly against someone else. So by what happened to Miriam, she's thrown out from all the camps, right? From certainly she wouldn't necessarily have been there by, but where Moshe was, but she had to be outside, where the Jewish people were, and she wasn't allowed in until God had healed her. So the camps themselves, if you look in the book of Numbers, the Jewish people were set up by the tribes in different in different camps as well. But the main thing is that you had a few of these different camps, either by the Levites, the priests, the camp of God, and everyone else. Right. The third camp was the Jewish people, and that's where Miriam was thrown out from there. The third question was what's the difference between the children of Israel and the gathering, I guess, of the Jewish people. Normally, when the congregation of Israel, usually when the Torah says the congregation of Israel, it means everybody. It means the entire Jewish people. God gathered them together for different things. When it says the children of Israel, a lot of times the rabbis will say it refers to men, not women. In other words, when it says B'nai Yisrael, literally it means the sons of Israel. Right. So the rabbis will say the sons, not the daughters. Right? Sometimes it can mean, people say the children of Israel. It's everybody. Well, it's not necessarily, everybody. It depends, a lot of times on context. But when Moshe will say gathered, he gathered the congregation. Usually the congregation means everybody, means men and women, children together. Usually the children of Israel will mean specifically men, not women, unless otherwise stated.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I just have to say, it's like the longest show we've had in a while. I do not think that we're going to be able to change the title for at least 2 or 3 weeks. This has been really good. A lot of great questions, and realistically, this is a good place to stay for a while. So I think with your permission, Rabbi, we'll go ahead and close up tonight.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה